Greetings, ladies and gents, and welcome to today's edition of Tales from Outer Space, where I take stories from across the internet and read them for your entertainment. This particular story is called Human, My Technicality, written by that 2009 weird emo kid. In legal discussions, the most interesting quirk of human kingdoms is their generous granting of personhood to an outsider that stumbles into their lands. Don't be fooled, though. It might seem benevolent on the surface, but underneath that veneer is a malevolent intent fueled by spite and a sadistic need for punishment. You see, from a human point of view, one can't be held accountable for the actions if they're not a conscious agent involved in the action. And so, in order to morally justify the enforcement of their laws, they have to first admit that the individuals they judge are actually people. As an elf, this is something that shocked me when I first heard about it. Applying elvish law to anyone outside of it would be ridiculous. For example, our criminals' trials are at a minimum decades long and can easily stretch into a century. Judging someone who isn't an elf by these standards is completely unreasonable. All the other long-lived races share similar attitudes. Dwarves only judge other dwarves by their dwarvenness, and dragons only concern themselves with the affairs of each other. It all stems from the implicit idea that we can only judge one another from our own frame of reference. And humans recognize this too. They just approach it from the opposite end, where they stretch the definition of human to mean any reasonable person. This tendency to humanize is their most consistent trait, to the point where they build their legal systems around it without even realizing it. One would think that we, as inquisitors, don't have to worry about such things since we operate above moral law, but as a Grand Master of our order, I believe I have the authority to say that this narrow interpretation of our duty, more often than not, laws are already in place to make our work easier, and ignoring them is usually counterproductive. During my first journey with Arthrox, my human mentor, I soon found this relevant when we stumbled upon a strange dilemma. In a small human city along the Illyrian coast, a clay golem had been working on the docks for as long as anyone alive could remember. Nobody knew who made it or why it was built, but it carried a lot of their cargo off their ships every single day without fail, never showing any hint of expression or personality. This was to make people grow sentimental over it, just due to the familiarity of watching it perform its duties every day. They started treating it as if it were a person, and eventually it became a beloved fixture of the community. And then the clay golem was shattered by an orc. This caused so much uproar that almost everyone in the city wanted to execute the perpetrator on the spot. The captain of the guard wasn't willing to carry it out, however, and followed protocol by jailing the orc, setting a trial date for him where he would be promptly judged. When the captain heard about inquisitors in the city, he sent a squire to contact us and ask for help with the situation. Arthax didn't seem to be interested until we met the captain, and I asked, "Why are you protecting this orc so much?" The captain seemed caught off guard by the question, furrowing his brow deep in thought before saying, "Because I'm pretty sure it wasn't his fault." "Really? Why?" "He literally came flying out of nowhere. I saw him with my own eyes, falling out of the sky. I didn't see where he landed, but I think he just crashed into the golem. Furthermore, the poor guy was disoriented and beat up, with burn marks across his chest. He wasn't in any condition to randomly lash out at a golem." Arthrax couldn't hide a flash of guilt across his face. After doing some mental math, I realized the timeline of this incident matched up with when he scattered hundreds of orcs into the horizon last week. If there was anyone to blame here, it was Arthrax, not the orc. "This is not my fault," answered Arthrax, once we were in private. "I didn't say it was," I said, stifling a chuckle. "It's not, and wipe that smug look off your face. Either way, are you really letting the orc take the blame for this?" "Of course not," said Arthrax, insulted. "If it comes to it, we'll just bust him out of jail and fight our way out of the city." I sighed. "I was afraid you'd say that. Can we please avoid any violence? I'd rather not get chased out of town again." "Then help me investigate and prove my innocence." "Don't you mean the orcs?" "Both. But how? Where do we even begin?" "Well, the captain mentioned burn marks, and I'm certain I didn't inflict them, so the only thing that could have done it before it was captured was the golem. I'd like to get a closer look at the construct and work from there." When we saw the golem, we were able to piece together what happened just by studying the runes that energized it. The golem wasn't just for menial labor. It was actually a security drone designed specifically to aid during an old orcish siege. Once it spotted the orc, it triggered its old programming and began firing mana beams at him, provoking the fight. Arthax was delighted to hear this. You see, hairbangs, not my fault. I would argue you still caused it, though. Arthax frowned. No, the city's responsible here. They're the incompetents who were using a weapon without even realizing it. That attitude won't convince anyone, I said. But it gives me an idea. I then went to Mashio, a human lawyer that had been traveling with us for a while now, ever since we escaped the wedding together. He and Priestess Isabel had been tagging along in our journey back to Sonata, but it wasn't until now that they got involved in one of our cases. After hearing about the situation, Mashio explained to me the legal principles I described at the beginning of this chronicle, and proceeded to build a case around it, representing the orc in his upcoming trial. It all hinged on the fact that the orc was being judged by a contradictory set of values. The entire dilemma came about because the city was treating the artificial construct like an actual person and calling the accident a murder. But that same impulse to humanize was a double-edged sword. If a clay golem could be considered human enough to be granted rights, then the orc was more than worthy of them too. And so, despite most of the city hating it, the orc was deemed a human by technicality and set free. End of story. Story number 2, Gratitude, written by Hicks Chem. The world had seen billions of rotations around its reddish star. It had 2 moons that swept in elliptical orbits around it, and had watched over the tiny life forms that slowly emerged and burgeoned into teeming multitudes that occasionally needed culling through comets or volcanic activity or flooding events. And it had overseen these carefully, making sure that enough died off, but not too many. Life had to go on. It persists and got more complex and flourished enough that eventually it got to needing one of those extinction-level events. But that wasn't what the world's responsibility was. Tending to those important guidances, managing the life forms that swarmed on its surface. Some had even developed sentience, which brought a measure of pride to the world. But today was different. A small metal meteorite slammed into an area rich in biomass, but far from the sentient populations, and it turned out to contain an advanced life form. The world considered this interloper as it began to explore the area. It was tentative at first, but slowly, over a couple rotations, it extended its range, plumbed the pools of dihydrogen monoxide, and was able to ignite some of the growths into small, contained fires that they sustained for hours. And then the life form did something that brought the world up short. It voiced a call that was almost musical. There was some manner of verbal communication. But the world didn't need to understand its sounds. It understood its meaning. It was expressing gratitude to the world. It appreciated the comfortable temperature. It honored the small life forms that the world had shepherded, but had turned into sustenance for the life form. On the next rotation, the life form from space made those sounds again, the message conveying thanks for another time period of warm red light from the central star, and a plea for the world to allow them to find life forms to maintain their sustenance, with a promise that nothing would go to waste if it saw fit to oblige. The world scanned across its native sentience, looking for any of the sentiments that this alien life form had expressed. It found none. The natives only cared for building, mining, harvesting, and reproducing. The usual. Somehow the world found this life form's type of attention, being focused solely on improving its own situation, to be somewhat selfish. This alien was actually appreciative of all the work and care that the world had expended as it watched over its native life forms. The world had to admit that it was nice to be acknowledged and appreciated. As the alien life form reiterated its gratitude when the Terminator slid past it, and it was subjected to the dark part of the cycle, the world felt a pang, and diverted a major storm front away from the life form's location. It would still have droplets of dihydrogen monoxide falling on it, but the damaging winds wouldn't ravage its area. And the alien life form gained gratitude for the abundance of dihydrogen monoxide that it was collecting as one aspect of its sustenance. The world felt an emotional warmth. What a precious and thoughtful life form this alien being was. It was almost no effort to clear the clouds from around the life form's area, allowing the red rays of the local star to warm and dry its area. For several rotations, the world made tiny adjustments to make the alien life form a little more comfortable. And with every rotation, with every extinguishing of native life form that would give sustenance to the alien, there was a repentance and gratitude from the alien. Somehow, they made it all have more meaning. The world began to recognize that the alien also had thanks and wishes that it expressed to the moons, and those orbiting bodies that had never been active before began to communicate with the world. Such a time the world had never experienced. As much as the moons had always orbited it, they had never been companions before. Somehow this alien life form had awakened them with its expressions, and they ceased to be moons and became the moons. Slowly, over time, this alien life forms reshaped the area around it, but always with expressions of apology at death, gratitude for what it was able to find, or when things went beneficially for it, or relief for avoiding some calamity depending on what kind of task was being undertaken. The alien life form even started to take up some caretaking duties for the lesser native life forms, building safe places away from predators, and bringing the sustenance so that they can lead an easy, safe life. Even with the consumption of some of the offspring or older members of life forms, the group thrived. The world realized that it was nice to have help, and returned the favor, giving little helpful environmental nudges to keep things as optimal as possible for the alien life form and its charges. The moons, likewise, felt the praise and requests from the alien life form, and did what little they could to influence small life forms' movements or weather patterns that might aid the alien life form. From the world's perspective, these efforts were negligible, but they brought forth gratitude towards the moons, and the world got some unearned thanks too, and that couldn't really be bad, right? But nothing lasts forever. One day, a metal comet headed straight for the world, and even as it planned for another extinction event, the comet slowed and slipped into orbit. The world found that it had a sense of self, and communicated welcome and questioning aspect of why it had joined the group. The comet indicated that it was a conveyancer ship of an alien life form, a human, and that it had come to rescue the alien life form on the surface of the world to return it to society. The world felt some despair at the possibility of loss of such a life form, and expressed this to the ship. It understood and responded with how satisfying it was to have these life forms within itself. It expressed its sorrow and empathy for the world, but let it know that once one of these life forms found a suitable space for existence, they wouldn't let it alone for long. It told the world to prepare for a small group of alien life forms who would examine it, then larger groups who might arrive. They might even bring a station to become an artificial moon to aid in their time here. The world expressed pleasure. More of these life forms that appreciated the work that the world had undertaken would be welcome change. End of story. I'd greatly like to thank our Tier 5 channel members, Caspar Arnholtz, John Creighton, Manatharia, 050, Dragzoon WRE, and Elijah Silvercross. Thank you very much.